let's go to the phone lines now and bring in a three-time Super Bowl champ, of course, Fox NFL analyst, working the Falcons and Panthers this week. The great Mark Schlereth is with us now. He lives out in Denver, so he knows this Broncos team pretty darn good, too. Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Doing fantastic. You know, we were just talking about, so it's a position very well, the offensive line. The Lions deciding whether or not Frank Ragnow will play this week. Obviously a key cog on that offensive line. They've been together one time this entire season. We're working on game, 13 or 14 right now?
It's game 14.
How difficult is that when you don't have your offensive line, the guys that you thought were going to be starting for you all year, just not be together?
Yeah, I think from a communication standpoint, it's difficult. I mean, I've always said this about playing offensive line. All five of us could be doing the wrong thing. As long as we're doing the wrong thing together, it's probably going to work out. And that's kind of how it works. And then that communication aspect of it, snapping the ball. Obviously, had a missed snap last week where there was a fumble between Jared Goff and Glasgow. So, those things are real, and those are problems. And if you're good enough to go, I mean, it's one thing to play hurt, and it's another thing to play injured. I believe you have to play both hurt and injured. But most importantly, you have to play well hurt and injured. And that's a requirement. To me, that's just a requirement of playing in the National Football League. So if he's good to go, or if he can get out there on the football field, I think that helps solidify them and actually puts them in the best position to have success. So those are important things, and those five guys working together, it's a really important aspect of football. It's 5/11ths of your football team, and those guys have to be on the same page.
Hey, Stink, it's Maz. Thanks again for coming on with us. We love having you. Matter of fact, you and Adam are, you're like our home team here. You've done a lot of games of the Lions. What have you seen? What is the difference you've seen from the beginning of the season till last week when you saw them in Chicago?
Well, I think, injuries on the defensive side of the ball have definitely taken their toll. The first 6 games, they were giving up 18 points a game, a little over 18 points a game. In the last 6 games up until last week, they were giving up close to 30 points a game. And that's kind of a battle of attrition situation, with some injuries and things of that nature. And one thing I think about them, and, Fields said this to me, Justin Fields said this to me, and I think this is a testament to your coach and to that organization right now. He said, I can tell on film they have a great culture. And that was interesting to me. And I was like, well, tell me, how do you see that on film? Because I know how I see it on film. And he goes, because they play exceptionally hard, they fly around, and they got corners that will tackle. Like, there's nobody that's above the team, right? Every guy is flying around trying to dislodge the ball and hitting people. And they try to out-hit you and out-hustle you. And so he goes, and you can see that on film, and I completely 100% agree with him. Now, I think talent-wise, do you have the most 2 talented corners in football? No. Are they good players? Yeah, but are they the most talented? No. I could name a dozen teams with a better tandem from a pure talent standpoint at the cornerback position. But the bottom line is they do fly around, they do hit people, and so that part, as long as offensively you're producing, you can overcome some of the defensive talent deficiencies, if you will. But if that offense isn't consistently maintaining the ball, possessing the ball, and producing, well, then that defense is going to get exposed over time.
How about these Denver Broncos, your old team? One of the hottest teams in the league. Sean Payton, when they were 1-5, said, hey, if the Lions did what they did last year, there's no reason that we can't do that. And you see a reborn Russell Wilson, and you see a reborn defense, the way they were playing last year. What are the Lions in for in this game, Mark?
I'll tell you, the Broncos won under Vance Joseph on the defensive side of the ball. Let's start there. They dumped a couple of guys that were high-priced guys. Randy Greger, they went out and got in free agency, paid him a ton of money. They just dumped him. Like, hey, later, dude, you're out. Same thing with Frank Clark. And they were
a rotation of young guys on the edge. Now,
I think Benito might be injured. He may not be able to play, so that hurts them a little bit on the edge. But they've got some young players that play hard and are actually really good players. I think Browning has the ability to become a really good pass rush guy. Mike Purcell was hurt early in the year. He was on PUP or something of that nature. He's a really good run-stuffing nose guard. He plays that way, and he makes a lot of plays, makes a lot of tackles for kind of little to no gain. That kind of run stuff, that 2 yards and less kind of run. So he does a really good job with that. Singleton is just a fly-around energy guy at the linebacker position. They got one of the best corners in football, and they've developed a nickel guy in McMillan that is as good as any nickel in the league. Man, that dude flies around. He's a great blitzer. And Vance Joseph is just one of those guys who will blitz you on any down. He'll bring pressure on every single down. So they're a pressure front. They're a pressure defense that way. And I think the biggest thing, and this is a Sean Payton quality, is understanding not only what your strengths are, but more importantly, what your limitations are, what your weaknesses are, and then mitigating those weaknesses, making sure you don't play to those weaknesses. With the Broncos, it really is about their quarterback. And there's a lot of things that Russell Wilson doesn't do well. And Sean basically has eliminated them from the program.
And they're going to run the football. They're going to get their attempts, even though they're averaging 3 whatever yards a carry. They're going to get their attempts. Then they're going to create opportunity from their backs with screens, swing passes, in the flats. They'll attack you in the flats, and then they'll play pass you. Meaning, they'll flag that ball out and play action. They'll have 2 tight ends on one side. They'll have a 7-8 man protection and 2-man route. And they'll let Russell take some deep shots because he throws the deep ball as well as anybody, and he throws those swing passes and those screens. And those things are harder. They're short passes, but there's a touch that you have to have because you can't rifle them in there, and you can't lob them in there because that gives the defense time to react. There's a layering effect to that ball that has to be perfect, and he throws that ball exceptionally well for those backs to catch it in stride. And then one of the things I like about that system is you put it back on a cornerback, and you say, now we're going to make this corner tackle. And you make that corner tackle enough on a big back that's 220 pounds, and he runs you over or he gets a couple extra 3-4 yards. You do that enough, eventually that guy's going to break down in coverage.
And that's when they attack you over the top. So it's a pretty simple system. It's pretty simple what they're doing, but they're executing it well, and they're possessing the ball. They're winning the time possession by 10 minutes in all these wins they've had. I think they've stacked 6 of the last 7. So when you look at it that way, that's really what they're doing. It's really, football at its core can be very complex, but it's very simple, and it's a very simple game plan. They're basically trying to beat you up physically. They're trying to do the same thing Detroit is to a degree, only Detroit's passing game, is a lot more advanced because their quarterback is just he's a better anticipatory thrower, better windows thrower, better at the intermediate routes. Russell really doesn't throw those routes very well.
Hey, Mark, final thing. I wanted to ask you about the game you're doing this week, Falcons at the Panthers. You mentioned the quarterbacks. How about Bryce Young? What do you think is going through his mind? His coach is fired. You see C.J. Stroud not in offensive Rookie of the Year competition. He's being talked about as an MVP. Will Levis brings his team back from down 14 points or 13 points or 3 minutes to go. A lot of people are looking at him as the next quarterback of the Titans. What is going through the mind of Bryce Young right now, in your opinion?
Yeah, they're not very
good at any level on the offensive side, but he's really struggling. And looking at him on film and watching him on film, and this is an issue with a lot of young quarterbacks, but maturing quarterbacks, is if you design something on the front side and it's not open and he's got to take the time to get to the backside, it's an incompletion, or a sack, or he can't get to the backside. When he goes to the backside, I think the pocket collapses around him enough at 5'9" and whatever, 5'10". He doesn't see much of it, and so the accuracy and the timing is just off of that offense. So if number one that you design isn't open, then you're in trouble. And what you see a lot of teams doing with him is they're stacking the box. They're bringing rolling safeties down, stacking the box. They're playing some type of, press man on the outside with a single high safety, and they're trying to disrupt the routes so that first read isn't open. And knowing that now all of a sudden there's enough clutter on the inside. The other thing you'll see of them a lot is blitzing in the middle of the football field. So they're bringing pressure up the middle, which is going to affect his eyes. And when that first guy isn't open, and he tries to get back to the backside, you see him drop his eyes down to the pass
all the time. He's struggling. And they designed a bunch of play pass stuff. Play pass is off a 7-step drop. You're at about 11.5 yards deep, so that you can see that you throw one deep. And he must have had 4 or 5 shots. He probably has 12 shots in the last he's probably had 12 deep shots in the last 2 games, and he put it on the receiver one time. So not only are you overthrowing him by 8 yards, but you can't even get you're not even going to draw a PI. Underthrow it and see if you can, and see if you can get, as the receiver stops, see if you can get the DB to run into you
Right.
and at least get a PI, right? I mean, you throw it 8 yards over a guy's head out of bounds, you can't even, you're not going to get it's uncatchable. You're not getting a PI. So not only are you not getting completions, you're not even getting the PIs called. So it's let's just say that it's hard to watch, and I get the good fortune of calling it, so it's going to be hard.
We'll miss you this week.
Right, we will miss you in Detroit. Mark Schlereth.
Yeah, I don't. Hey, listen, I don't know whose Cheerios I pissed in, but anyhow, I can't wait.
Hey, how's that stinking good green chili of yours?
No, everything is good, man. As a matter of fact, hey, do yourselves a favor. If you get a chance, go to YouTube and check out my it's the Stinking Truth podcast. But I did a breakdown on Chicago. I call it the Leftovers podcast on Chicago, Detroit. So if your listeners want to get some more in-depth stuff of some of what the coaches said and some of what the players said and kind of all the stuff that I didn't get to in the broadcast that I got to in the meetings, I just kind of dump it all there on the podcast, so it's kind of interesting.
That's awesome.
I love it. Mark Schlereth.
We love you,
always
man.
Appreciate your time here in Detroit. Thanks so much. All the best to Daniel and the
guys.
family as well.
Appreciate
Thanks
you.
so much.
Always.
Thank you, man.
You
See you,
got
buddy.
it. You got it. The great Mark Schlereth, Fox NFL analyst, works the games with Adam Amin, 3-time Super Bowl champ.
He looks like he could play now.
Oh, I'm sure he could.